Special shout out to today's episode to SeatGeek. We recently partnered with them to become a brand ambassador. What does that mean? Well, for you, it means you get a special discount when you make your first ticket purchase with SeatGeek. With my code InjuredListPod, you will get $20 off your first purchase with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a ticket purchasing app that takes all the confusion out of buying tickets to your favorite sports, concert events, and more. They score each ticket on a scale of 1 to 10 to help you know if you're getting a good deal. Green is good, red is bad. My followers get $20 off their first ticket purchase using my code InjuredListPod. Click on the link in the show notes and browse for your favorite events. Your next big night ever is waiting, and they have the tickets.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the host of the Injured List podcast, Brian Scott.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Your host, Brian Scott, here. Welcome to another awesome edition of the Injured List podcast. And once again, we have a phenomenal guest that we're going to bring on stage in just a minute. But just to give you a brief background on my guest, and to be honest, there's so much to talk about. He's accomplished so many things. I don't know if we're going to have time to get to it all in this episode. But he's a former NFL player, played 129 games in the league over the course of about 13 years, was an All-American at Northern Iowa, where he was eventually elected into the Athletic Hall of Fame. He was a multi-sport athlete, earned All-American honors in track. I mean, the list just keeps going on and on. He played tight end to start his career, but ended up in the NFL as an offensive tackle. Born and raised in Minnesota, played stints with the Cowboys, the Colts, and eventually the Raiders, where he really left his mark. Unfortunately, had an injury toward the end of his career, which we'll get into, and has accomplished a lot of other amazing things outside of the world of football. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mr. Steve Wright.
Hey. Thank you. Nice introduction. I sure appreciate it. That feels good hearing some of those things.
Well, it's my pleasure. And like I said, I don't know if we'll be able to get to everything in time. There's a lot to talk about, and I've got questions on everything you've done because you've done some cool stuff in your life and career. And let's get right into it. Steve, you were a multi-sport athlete. I mentioned that at the beginning, and this is something we don't hear a lot about these days with athletes focusing in on that one sport in particular. But how did this impact your ability to play in the NFL or influence it to that effect coming out of college and high school and stuff?
Yeah, I think probably just gave you a balance of footwork and eye-hand coordination and getting knocked down in hockey or maybe being by yourself, throwing the shot put in discus or learning to get along with the new teammates in basketball. And I think I've always preached to friends. I think team sports is the ticket for young kids, even if they're not going to pursue it, real hard. But just to get out there and learn to get along with others, support each other, and teams. As you start moving up and you get into the pros, they're looking for team players and not trying to do it by yourself. So I think all those sports just help move me along.
Sure. And one thing I always talk to my patients about, especially the younger patients I see on a daily basis, is the importance of cross training and trying to pick up other sports as a way to really condition and stay in shape, but also for injury prevention. You lasted a long time in the league before you had any major setbacks with injuries. Would you attribute that to the fact that you trained in different sports and played all year round?
Possibly, I think so. I always showed up at training camp in the best shape, of my life, of the year for sure. Show up ready to go. A lot of guys would show up to training camp and use the 6 weeks of training camp to get in shape, and then they'd pull a muscle, and then it'd be sitting out, or one thing after another. But I always showed up in shape, and when you're in shape like that and you do get injured, you pop right back.
Now you played collegiately at Northern Iowa, and you played multi-sports. You were All-American in track with the disc. Was it the shot put in discus, if I'm not
Yeah, that was in
mistaken?
high school.
I'm
Yes.
sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. In high school, I
Yeah,
thought it was Northern Iowa.
yeah,
Regardless, you were elected to the Northern Iowa Athletic Hall of Fame, which is quite an accomplishment as well.
yes.
Where you did participate in multiple sports. Is that correct?
I just played football there.
You
I
did. Okay.
went there. I went there as a tight end. Played some offensive tackle, and my last year played tight end. Sprained my ankle and missed the last couple of games. And yeah,
So when you caught on with the Dallas Cowboys, you were actually a free agent at the time. One of a few free agents at that time that was actually signed to an NFL roster. Is that correct?
well, they could sign as many back then. I don't know how many it was, but our team, the Cowboys, signed 120 free agents. And
Wow.
so I didn't get drafted. So they just signed a whole bunch of extra guys. So there was 120 of us, and 3 of us made it.
And you were one of the ones, and that's undrafted. That's
I
crazy.
was one, and Everson Walls, who got beat on the catch with Dwight Clark and
Sure.
Michael Downs. Yeah, so it was a real proud moment making the team.
And you spent a short stint with them and then ended up on the Colts for a couple of years, but you really made your mark with the Raiders.
Yeah, I just went into, finally hit my maturity and had my best years. I think as an offensive lineman, you probably hit them, mid to later career. Yeah, when I got to the Raiders, my career, my big time was like 1990, 91. But yeah, I got there in 87 and retired in 94. So I spent 7 years with the Raiders.
And you anchored down the offensive line next to Howie Long and some other honorably mentioned players as well. Any guys that kind of stick out in your memory as far as like teammates or opponents that you went against?
Well, Howie was my practice partner as a defensive end. Yeah, and I played offensive tackle, but are you talking about on other teams?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I played against them all the greats. Lawrence Taylor, played against him in the Meadowlands.
Anybody in particular that gave you a difficult time?
It was a long afternoon in the Meadowlands. I also had a long afternoon in Philadelphia playing against Reggie White, the minister. Yeah, one of my first games as a rookie with Dallas, we were playing in Anaheim against the Rams, and I got thrown in for 2 quarters, the last 2 quarters against Jack Youngblood. But I had Neil Smith that I played against probably at least 12, 14 times with Kansas City, and Bruce Smith up with the Buffalo Bills.
Sure.
So it's as I got into my mid to late career, everybody I played against, there was no weekend off. It was always an all-pro or future Hall of Famer or something. So, it was rough, but it was that's why we played those games. So I loved it.
And unfortunately, like many of my other guests on the podcast, the injury bug did find its way onto you as well. You had a pretty devastating shoulder injury. Was it in like around 1990, 91, I believe?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that was kind of toward the tail end of your career. Did that injury really factor into the end of your career?
It helped decide, but to be honest with you, to end my career, the team was moving back up to Oakland, and I already had my fingers and mind into a business that I ended up incorporating. As soon as the team left for Oakland, I stayed, retired, and incorporated my company, Cloudburst, and took off from there. I could have gone back up to Oakland with them and maybe struggled another year or two or something, but then I would have been in Oakland, and all my contacts from the last, 8 years were here in Los Angeles. So it was an easy decision to quit. But that had a little factor to do with it. Yeah, it's it just made going to work and practice and games just a little tougher. I
Sure.
really tore out my shoulder. And actually it's starting to bug me again
Oh, no.
30 years later. Yeah, I'm gonna
Well, they must have had good treatment and good rehab in order for it to last that long.
I
Because what
had
you
I had
described
I
to me
had
made it sound like a really bad injury.
yeah, it was sticking out backwards and out of the socket. And a guy named Neil Elitrosh with Curlin Job, who's now famous for doing everybody,
Yep.
from Brady and Kobe Bryant's Achilles tendon and everything
Hmm.
else. I got him in his second year, and he was just learning the ropes or something.
There you
But he
go.
actually, he was solid and
Yeah.
did a great job on my shoulder.
Yeah, he's a well-respected surgeon
Yeah.
throughout the sports medicine community.
Mhm.
I've worked with a lot of physicians in New York during my time there who trained under him, and yeah, he's got a great reputation. And recently, as we know, he just did Aaron Rodgers' Achilles and
Yeah,
as
right,
well.
right,
Yeah,
right, right. Yeah, I got him in his early day. I think it was in his second year.
that's awesome.
And
Well,
it was good.
obviously, he's honed his skills since then, but it sounds like he got off to a great start with you.
Yeah, yeah.
And how was it not being injured for all those years, playing at such a high level, to then have to go through something like that and then bounce back and play in the league again?
It's just part of the business. There was no, oh, poor pity me or anything. It's just get it get it healthy and get back in there.
Yeah,
You a lot of guys would take painkiller shots or something to kind of help them along. I always wanted to feel the pain. It sounds kind of twisted, but if there's something going on there, I really wanted to feel it, especially if it was in a joint.
sure.
So just work your tail off, and I didn't want my career to end, and um, there was I just worked tirelessly on getting back in there, and it worked. And for that, I got to be the recipient for the Raiders in 1991 for the Ed Block Courage Award. One of those is given to every player in the league, the 32 teams a year. And 1991, I won the Ed Block Courage Award. Went back to Baltimore, and John Elway had won it for the Broncos, and yeah, it was. It's just you're gonna get hurt. Everybody that plays
Yeah,
football is gonna get hurt.
yeah.
One way or another. That's just part of the sport. And I was fortunate to be able to bounce back and keep all those injuries at bay. I wore knee braces for every one of my practices and games, which saved my knees. Um, that was the first one to wear one of the plastic shields over my eyes.
Okay.
After seeing teammates and myself, I got poked in the eye. And actually, crazy story. One of my first games I ever played in Dallas as a rookie, I was running on for the punt return, I guess it was the punt
Oh,
return team, and all pro defensive tackle John Dutton is staggering off the field, kind of like he's drunk. He's just doesn't have any equilibrium, and he's got his hands up inside his mask, and he's screaming, and he takes his hand away, and his eye is out of the socket, and
oh boy.
it's sitting on just on the bone. I was just like, what am I going into? This is a
Oh my.
war.
Yeah.
He ended up pushing it back in himself, I guess, or whatever it was. He didn't go blind, and I'm not sure how
Wow.
much he played after that. But yeah, I've seen a lot of crazy injuries.
That would take me by surprise too. I mean, even though I work in the healthcare field, I can't say I've ever seen anything like that either, especially not on the football field.
The craziest one probably was Charlie Hanna, our offensive guard. We were playing in New Orleans, and we all heard this snap, and Charlie's screaming, and he's trying to get up. He's laying flat. He's laying on his stomach, and a couple of the Saints and a few of the Raiders are holding him down. His shin snapped in half, and his foot was laying right next to his knee, sticking out sideways. It kind of looked like a broken toy. I describe a lot of these things in my book.
Yeah, it's amazing what the human body can suffer and yet
Yeah.
still bounce back and actually
Yeah.
function normally.
Yeah. And, when you're in shape, like we were talking earlier, when you're in shape, you do bounce back
Yeah.
quicker, as long
Yeah.
as, hopefully it's not a joint, but like a Kobe Bryant with his, Aaron Rodgers, how quickly he popped back from a torn Achilles tendon. Come
Yeah.
on, that's
Yeah.
just crazy. I mean, he was back ready to go in what, like 3 months or
Yeah,
something?
he was, his plan was that if the Jets made it at all into the playoffs, he was going to make himself
Yeah,
available for the first
that's
round. And
that's just crazy.
unfortunately, didn't play out like that, but he was getting close. Yeah.
Yeah, the training staff, they'll come over your house, every night and, doing different things to you to help you get
Sure.
ready. So it's, yeah, it's easy to pop back actually, but
So when you were going through this injury, at any point, were you concerned that this possibly could be the end? Did you
yeah.
have plans for life after football by that point? Had you started thinking about that before?
Well, it was right about that time that I was over in Palm Springs and the mist was blowing above our restaurant, out on the patrons. And I thought, what a great idea to have back on our sidelines. And I never been, might have been the year I got hurt. I don't remember. But I brought the idea back to Art Shell and he let me try it. And it just, it flipped everybody out. It was the first mist cooling fan system on the NFL sidelines.
And that was Cloudburst, was it? Is that right?
Yes, and it's still in existence. My partner still owns it. We got it on quite a few of the teams, but then we kind of got out of sports. We did most of Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Started doing hotels, and we got them into the government, into NASA, into aircraft carrier decks, and Burlington Northern out in the middle of the desert. Just where air conditioning is non-existent. And then I got the contract to cool the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. And
Awesome.
so, yeah, I hadn't really been thinking too much about where I was going to be going. I was still healthy at that time, as a matter of fact, when I did discover this. So I was feeling really comfortable with playing, either with the Raiders or somebody. But I knew I had a lot to give and was still, producing.
That's an awesome story, how you took that idea and were able to, and that was a game-changing thing that was brought into the league, not just in football, but in other sports as well, like you mentioned with baseball
Right.
and the Olympics and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Sports and industry, the
Yeah.
coal mines and the smelting plants and the
Yeah.
plastic extruder plants. And yeah, then I ended up getting into roughly 1,500 Home Depots and Lowe's and Targets and Costco, and with home do-it-yourself misting kits with like 40 SKUs. Yeah, it turned into quite a business that I ended up selling probably 7 years later.
And so you basically took an existing product but adapted it for the world of sports and whatnot,
Yeah.
and it just found its
Yes.
way everywhere else.
Exactly. I didn't create anything new. I just took a great idea and gave it a new application.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, lesson to you young athletes out there who don't have a plan. You never know when that idea might spark in your head.
Yes. Yes.
And so as we transition into this life after football, you have many other accomplishments that you've been also able to achieve. And you mentioned briefly your book. Tell us about your book. I'm awaiting my copy, which I ordered off Amazon.
Oh,
And
did you?
guys,
All right.
I'll have all the show notes and stuff in all the information in the show notes if you guys are interested with a link. But tell us about it. It's called Aggressively Human, correct?
Yes.
He's probably got a
I just happen to have a copy right here.
There you go. Look at that.
How strange. They're in my car, they're in my trunk and in the passenger seat. And
They're just all over.
I had an eye appointment today and sold a couple at the doctor's office.
There you go.
It was just that everybody's got a story.
Yep.
Like you've been saying, I've been pretty fortunate. I've had a lot of great opportunities. I've worked hard. I've looked for opportunities. If a door opens, I'm charging through it is my philosophy. I don't try to analysis to paralysis. If something sounds good, I'm charging. That's how I got on Survivor. I was asked if I wanted to try it. I'd never seen the show. I said, sure, where are we going? And they wouldn't tell me. And I landed in Nicaragua. And same with my business. If you see something that looks like a possibility, I was up with Buzz Aldrin doing zero gravity flight with him.
Awesome.
I just got asked to, and then just making opportunities.
Yeah.
So back to the book. I just wanted to get all these stories out. And so last March, I talked with my wife and said, I'm going to start writing this. And she partnered with me and helping me keep the thing cleaned up. And I had all the stories, and together we put this thing out. And it was just great going down memory lane. What made me who I am, the mentors that really influenced me, good and bad. You can be influenced just as much with bad mentors, and like, wow, I don't want to be like that. To just learning to follow your instincts, surround yourself with good people, treat people kind. I've got quite a few stories in there of just treating people kind, how it's come back to me tenfold.
Yeah.
One story, if I can share this, because
Absolutely,
it's pretty remarkable. Probably about 1992, I was wearing Converse shoes. I had a Converse contract, and everybody else had, Adidas and Reebok and so forth. And there was a guy in the locker room, a shoe salesman, coming out with a new shoe, same old football cleat and everything else. And nobody was giving him the time of day. And the shoe looked kind of cool, and I knew the guy was scrapping and wanted someone to wear it. And so I ended up wearing it. He went back to his company, and he was a hero. He got their brand new shoe in an NFL game on it with a Raider. I didn't think anything about it. So I retire, start my Cloudburst business about 3 years later, or something like that. 2 years later after I retired. So I'm running this business, and then we go to Atlanta to try to get the Summer Olympics, get the contract to cool it. And we're going up against Raytheon and GE and a lot of other big air conditioning companies. And we do our dog and pony show and come back to Venice, and I get a call from a guy saying, "Hey, congratulations, you've got the contract to cool the 1996 Summer Olympics." Wow, wait a minute, what? How is that with GE there? And everything? He goes, "Steve, you don't remember me. My name is Mike Ariano. I was the guy that was selling shoes, and you were the only one that treated me cool. Everybody else pushed me out of the way and wouldn't give me the time of day. And you took my shoe, and you made me a hero in my company."
That is awesome.
Now it's payback time. I believe in you, and I think you're going to, you got to do it.
Great story, man. I love that.
Treating people nice, as I call it, treating people nice without looking for something in return, and it will return.
Yeah. It truly is a small world, and you never know when your paths might cross again, especially in the world of athletics and things like that. I mean, you just never know. It's an awesome story. And
I got another fun one that, when I was a rookie at training camp up in Thousand Oaks, these little boys would be on their little Stingray bicycles and screaming for you wanted to carry your helmet while you walked quite a ways, probably 3 football fields over to the practice field in the weights. And so I had this little kid, and just treated him like a cool, like my teammate, and had his parents come out one practice and met them. And, he was 10 years old, something like that. I ended up running into him 4, 5, 6 years ago, something like that, in a restaurant. And he was with his 3 kids, and told him what I did for him, how I boosted his persona of just being a good person. He saw what I was all about, and he was just thanking me profusely. I was just like, when we hugged, and it brought tears, and it was really pretty cool. I write about that as well.
Great. Yeah. Well, if that's the kind of stories we have to look forward to in your book, I can't wait to get my copy.
Thank you. Yeah. It's selling well.
Good.
Yeah, the writing was the fun part. The marketing is keeping me busy.
That'll keep you busy for sure. Yeah.
But you can find the book at wrightauthor.com, WRIGHT author.com, and take you to an Amazon site. And there's a trailer and a lot of photos from, with Bo Jackson and all my playing days.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned briefly, and I hadn't mentioned this in the intro, but, aside from all your other cool experiences and things you did outside the world of football, you were a contestant on the 22nd season of Survivor, Redemption Island. And you briefly mentioned how you got into that. I know you can't go into too many details, but man, how was your experience doing that?
That was crazy. Yeah, it was just again, I was down seeing Fox, down at Fox Studio, seeing Howie Long, my teammate for years, and we go down there once a year, a couple buddies and I, and just yucking it up in the green room. And the lead casting director put the offer out to me to give it a try. The finals were coming to Los Angeles, and so next thing I know, I jumped into that, and that's a long story, but I'll cut it down to then I ended up landing in Nicaragua for season 22, and I was last one in my tribe, and I lost 33 pounds in 31 days, just starving. That show is 100% real, let me tell you.
Yeah.
They don't give us any food. There's no cozy place to sleep. It's rough and tumble, and you're filthy, dirty. And I got home after my stint on it. I was gone for 2 months, and when I got home, my front tooth was driving me crazy. It was really sore.
Yeah.
I was going to go see my parents, and so I figured I better go run over to the dentist. And he took an X-ray, and he said, "We're going to pull that tooth right now." And it was my front tooth. He said, "There's so much bacteria in there; it kills people in third world countries."
Oh, jeez.
And yeah, so I show up at my parents' house, 33 pounds lighter, missing my front tooth. They were worried about me.
All those games, all those snaps in the NFL couldn't take you down, and then you 30 days on an island with no food or, or bed
just
sleep.
eating a handful of rice every day and sleeping on bamboo poles. And
It's
we
amazing.
were down there in the peak of the rainy season, just torrential rains at night.
That's an unbelievable experience. Some people listening might be like, this guy's a real life Forrest Gump. But I think the difference is like a lot of these experiences that happened to you and these things that you've done throughout your life really were because of opportunities, like you said, that you took advantage of, that you basically created the opportunity in some way, shape, or form through your actions and your decisions. So it's not like things just kind of fell into your lap. They all happen for a reason.
Yeah. So true, Brian. It's so true. When there's an opportunity, I'm telling everybody, when there's a little opportunity and it even sounds okay, at least charge through it. You might run into a wall, or it might fall apart, or you decide later. But if I would have hesitated at that moment in that green room and said, "Let me think about it. Let me call you tomorrow." And this is the head casting director for a CBS, quite a few different shows, with Mark Burnett. And so I might not have ever got her back on the phone again. So I loved the opportunity, even though I lost the front tooth and everything else. They asked if I wanted to come back, and not a chance, but at least I was there.
Well, your dentist did a good job. I would never been able to tell on the camera here.
Yeah.
Now, I want to bring it full circle because you're not done yet. You're still working on more projects. You've got this reverse, and this is going to sound weird for some people that might not have heard about this before. But I actually did a little bit of research. I watched your video on this. It's a great idea. And, my wife is Asian, and originally she's from Taiwan. And if you ever travel to Asia, especially my listeners, a lot of the toilets over there are not like what you would find here in America or even Europe for that matter. In fact, some of them are in the ground, some of them you got to squat, but you came up with an even newer concept. Tell us about your rear-facing toilet.
Yeah. My wife and I traveled around the world. We stayed in like 50 Airbnbs. And so, you're sitting there on the toilet and you're looking for the toilet paper back here and the flusher over there. And everybody's heard of the squatty potty with a little thing to lift your knees up. And so just kind of taking all that in, and the holes in the ground and everything else, I just started studying it. And like you did, Brian, it's the most ergonomically efficient way to have a clean, complete release, is having your knees higher than your hips. And that's why the squatty potty came about. Mm-hmm. My thing is, I've just seen so many handicapped people come in with their wheelchair and struggle standing up and trying to turn around. And so I just turn the toilet around. The toilet's basically the same way, but you approach it differently. You get on facing the tank. And so now you have the flusher and your toilet paper's right there, and you got the top of the tank, so you can put your car keys or wallet or magazine or phone or anything else up there. And then the squatty potty is built into it with a ramp. So, long-legged people, the short-legged people have their knees up, and then there's handles on the side. It's a wide pattern. So it's pretty much impossible to break it because I've covered so many things in there. But it's got handles on the side for a heavy or a handicapped person to lift themselves up. The toilet seat is, instead of fairly thin, it's quite a bit wider for the Americans that are just growing and getting larger sizes.
Sure.
So it covers quite a bit. And so I've got this patent for the next 20 years. It took about 3 years to do. And I'm going to start pushing that and seeing if I can, reach out to the Totos and Standards and Delta toilets. And there's about 30 big manufacturers. And see if I can either get it leased, for 10 years or something, or sell a patent. Yeah, it's just a fun thing to get out of my head.
They're not commercially or residentially available just yet for sale?
No, it's just a concept.
Just a concept.
And it's a patent. And I don't really want to have anything to do with any of the manufacturing. I've been down that road. I just want to either do a lease or sell the patent.
Okay. I mean, it had, I think, just from the perspective of the handicap ability to access that toilet in a safe way, that to me, I mean, that says a lot.
Yeah, it's ADA compliant, so it's the same level. They slide on, easy to slide on and slide off, and
I'll put links to that too on the show notes, everybody. So if you want to check that out, it's really interesting. And I think, like I said, I've seen a lot of handicapped people in the world of orthopedics with lower body injuries that are having to depend on wheelchairs and things, and they struggle to get up, use the toilet regular style, and having to grab onto the handles and all that stuff. It just spells a recipe. I hear a lot of people who get re-injured trying to do that, and any way that they can get on the toilet and get off without having to turn is huge.
Yeah. It's just it just tears my heart out watching it.
Yeah. Well, Steve, that's an awesome project you're working on. I'm sure it's not the last thing you'll be working on from the sounds of it. I think you've got a lot more.
Right now I'm just hoping for some waves out here. We live on a surf point in Malibu, and just been waiting for surf. I'm a stand-up paddle surfer. And,
there you go.
Boy, that sport's full of a lot of injuries. My wife broke her arm out here last year. Her board flew up and hit her, and get her on the injury the injured list.
Yeah, I'd love to have her. That and pickleball seem to be the two big things, I think, right now.
Right?
Pickleball seems to be ramping up as far as the injuries go very quickly.
What are they doing there? Are they losing knees or rolling ankles?
Sprained ankles, broken ankles, you name it. Landing on their wrists and breaking their wrist or elbows. We see it all.
Oh, how about that?
Well, anyway, Steve, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been an awesome segment. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. I know you've got a lot more to share, and people, if you heard the stories you shared with us and you're interested in more, check out the book. That's my son in the back.
All right. Hey.
Check out the book, Aggressively Human. I'll have the link in the show notes. I'm awaiting my copy anxiously here at home so I can get reading through it. And everybody, I want to special thank you to Steve Wright for joining us on the podcast today. Steve, any final words?
Brian, thank you so much. It was more than my pleasure. Love sharing all this with you. And if you want to do it again, I'm here. No, it's just the final words are, if you see an opportunity, charge through it. The whole cliche thing of believing in yourself. Put the oxygen mask on yourself. And then help everybody else around you. But you got to take care of yourself. And if there's opportunities, get them. They may never show again.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely true. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Injured List podcast. Your host, Brian Scott. Thank you very much for joining us with our special guest, Steve Wright.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.